The Gatekeepers. My name is Jason Rowe, and I'm an analyst for a 4-letter agency you've never heard of. We call it DOLE, the Department of Occult and Liminal Entities. Funny name, right? Sounds like it belongs to some harmless, bureaucratic department. But what we do? It's anything but harmless. The agency was formed decades ago, and on the surface, it was meant to protect humanity from supernatural threats. At least, that's what I believed when I first joined. But now I know the truth. They want to end the world. I can't explain how I stumbled into this nightmare. It started as any other day. I'd been with DOLE for 5 years, processing obscure cases and learning more about demons, interdimensional beings, and ancient rituals than I ever thought possible. Most of the time, it felt like reading horror stories, and the worst part? It was all true. I had grown numb to it, desensitized, really. Until a week ago. I was going through our archives, pulling case files related to dimensional tiers, portals, essentially. Strange anomalies had been increasing over the past year, and it was my job to track the pattern. Our computers registered bursts of energy at specific coordinates worldwide, usually followed by reports of disappearances, mutilated wildlife, or inexplicable sightings. I had been cross-referencing old reports with our recent data when I found something strange, an anomaly at Site 23, a remote facility I had no clearance for. No one talked about Site 23. It wasn't part of my job, so I ignored it. But something about it bothered me. The data was inconsistent, almost like someone had tampered with it. Later that night, I accessed the records remotely from my apartment. The system logs showed continuous entries for Site 23, going back for decades. Most of the information was redacted, but what I could see disturbed me. One entry stood out. It was a field report, dated nearly 40 years ago. The report referred to the Gatekeeper protocol, which involved opening controlled portals to other dimensions to extract resources. The report was vague, but the term resources stood out to me. Whatever DOLE was after, it wasn't oil, minerals, or anything tangible. I had a gut feeling, resources meant entities. I was about to log out when my screen flickered, then went black. A new message appeared, chilling in its simplicity. Access terminated. Incident logged. My heart pounded in my chest. I slammed my laptop shut, my pulse racing. They knew I'd seen something. I could almost hear the footsteps of my inevitable visitors. After all, I'd heard stories of analysts who dug too deep. They vanished. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching me. The office felt suffocating, the whispers of my coworkers blending into a dull hum. But it wasn't paranoia. I was certain of it. They knew. Around noon, I was called into Director Harmon's office. Harmon was a cold man, the kind of bureaucrat you only saw in passing but never spoke to unless you were in deep trouble. "Rowe," he said, motioning me to sit, "do you know why you're here?" I nodded, trying to keep calm. "I accessed files last night. About Site 23. I didn't mean to, but I was just..." He held up a hand. "Stop! You've seen too much." He leaned forward, his voice lowering. "The truth is, you've only scratched the surface. Site 23 is special. It's not just about protecting humanity. DOLE has a greater purpose. A higher calling. We're preparing for something." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean by preparing?" Harmon's lips curled into a thin smile. "The world is a fragile place, Rowe. You know that better than anyone. It's plagued by war, disease, corruption. We believe humanity's time is up. We're opening the gates to something greater. We've found beings, entities of immense power. The Gatekeeper protocol will allow us to bring them through. They'll cleanse the earth. A reset." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You're talking about ending the world. That's genocide." "Not an end," Harmon said calmly. "A beginning. We're not talking about angels and devils here. These are primordial forces. Think of it as a hard reboot. A new cycle for life. Humanity, as we know it, is a virus. We're just accelerating the inevitable." I stood up, panic rising. "You can't do this! You're talking about bringing demons, monsters, into our world! You can't control them," Harmon sighed. "We already are! We've been opening portals for decades! Small ones at first, to test the waters. But now, we're ready for the final phase! The great unveiling!" My mind raced. How could they believe this was the right thing to do? Bringing demons from other dimensions to cleanse the earth? This was insanity! And yet, I realized there was nothing I could do in that moment. Harmon stared at me, reading my expression. "You're going to try to stop us! I can see it in your eyes! But it won't matter! You can't stop the inevitable!" I left his office in a daze, barely able to think. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Dole wasn't just containing the supernatural. They were orchestrating an apocalypse! A demonic apocalypse! They had been experimenting with portals, bringing through entities, and the anomalies I'd been tracking were them preparing to open the final gate. I had to act fast. I knew I wouldn't last long if they suspected I was trying to stop them. They were watching! Always watching! That night, I went to my apartment, packed a bag, and drove to the only place I knew where I could get answers, Site 23. It was an isolated facility in the middle of nowhere, hidden beneath layers of secrecy and misdirection. The drive took hours, and by the time I arrived, the sun was setting. The facility was guarded, but I'd anticipated that. Using an old access code, I managed to bypass the outer perimeter. My heart pounded as I approached the entrance. This was it! The heart of the beast! Inside, the atmosphere was different. It wasn't like our offices, clean and sterile. Site 23 felt ancient. The walls were lined with arcane symbols, and the air was thick with an otherworldly energy. As I made my way through the dimly lit corridors, I began to hear it, a low, guttural growl. It wasn't human! I froze, my blood running cold. The growl came again, louder this time. Something was moving through the facility. I ducked into a side room just as a shadow passed by. Whatever it was enormous, its shape distorted by the flickering lights. I held my breath, waiting until it passed. I finally reached the central chamber, the heart of Site 23. The door was slightly ajar, and as I pushed it open, I saw it. A massive portal, swirling with dark energy, dominated the room. Around it, scientists and occultists worked feverishly, chanting in languages I couldn't understand. Standing at the center of it all was Director Harmon, overseeing the final preparations. The air around the portal crackled with energy, and through the shimmering veil, I could see them, the demons. Dozens of them, their twisted forms writhing in the darkness beyond the portal. They were waiting, eager to be unleashed upon our world. Harmon turned, noticing me. "You're too late, Ro! The gate is opening! Soon, they'll be free! And there's nothing you can do to stop it!" Desperation gripped me. I had no weapons, no plan. Just a burning need to stop this madness, and then I saw it, the control console. The portal was being stabilized by a series of energy regulators. If I could disable them! I sprinted toward the console, ignoring Harmon's shouts. Alarms blared as I reached the controls, my fingers flying over the buttons. The portal began to destabilize, its edges flickering wildly. "No!" Harmon screamed, rushing toward me. But it was too late. With a final command, I overloaded the system. The portal collapsed in on itself, the energy regulators sparking and exploding. The demons screamed in rage as they were sucked back into the void, the portal ceiling shut behind them. I barely had time to react as the room erupted in chaos. Harmon tackled me, his face twisted in fury. "You've doomed us all!" he shouted, his hands tightening around my throat. I fought back, kicking him off me just as the facility began to shake. The portal's collapse had triggered a chain reaction. The walls cracked, and the ceiling began to cave in. I staggered to my feet, gasping for air. Harmon lay unconscious, pinned beneath a fallen beam. I didn't waste any time. I ran. It was an isolated facility in the middle of nowhere, hidden beneath layers of secrecy and misdirection. The drive took hours, and by the time I arrived, the sun was setting. The facility was guarded, but I'd anticipated that. Using an old access code, I managed to bypass the outer perimeter. My heart pounded as I approached the entrance. This was it! The heart of the beast! Inside, the atmosphere was different. It wasn't like our offices, clean and sterile. Site-23 felt ancient. The walls were lined with arcane symbols, and the air was thick with an otherworldly energy. As I made my way through the dimly lit corridors, I began to hear it, a low, guttural growl. It wasn't human! I froze, my blood running cold. The growl came again, louder this time. Something was moving through the facility. I ducked into a side room just as a shadow passed by. Whatever it was enormous, its shape distorted by the flickering lights. I held my breath, waiting until it passed. I finally reached the central chamber, the heart of Site-23. The door was slightly ajar, and as I pushed it open, I saw it. A massive portal, swirling with dark energy, dominated the room. Around it, scientists and occultists worked feverishly, chanting in languages I couldn't understand. Standing at the center of it all was Director Harmon, overseeing the final preparations. The air around the portal crackled with energy, and through the shimmering veil, I could see them, the demons. Dozens of them, their twisted forms writhing in the darkness beyond the portal. They were waiting, eager to be unleashed upon our world. Harmon turned, noticing me. "You're too late, Ro. The gate is opening. Soon, they'll be free. And there's nothing you can do to stop it." Desperation gripped me. I had no weapons, no plan. Just a burning need to stop this madness. I barely escaped Site-23 before it collapsed into the earth, burying the horrors within. But I knew it wasn't over. Harmon had been right about one thing: I couldn't stop the inevitable. The portal may have been sealed, but the knowledge, the ritual, was still out there. There were other sites, other portals, and Dole wouldn't stop. I returned to my apartment, heart racing, trying to piece together what had just happened. Everything I'd known was a lie, and I had no idea how far the conspiracy stretched. I couldn't trust anyone. Dole would come for me. They'd erase me, just like they had erased everyone else who stood in their way. But I couldn't let that happen. Over the next few days, I went dark. No phone, no computer, just me and a battered notebook where I documented everything I'd learned. Every portal, every demon, every secret protocol Dole had put into place. I gathered what little evidence I could, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. The world was still turning, oblivious to the monsters hiding in the shadows. People went about their lives, unaware that their fate was hanging by a thread. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't anyone special. But now, I was the only one standing between humanity and the forces that wanted to tear it apart. I'm writing this now as a warning. I don't know how long I have. They're looking for me, and it's only a matter of time before they find me. But if you're reading this, if this message somehow makes it out into the world, then know this: the gates will open again. Dole won't stop until they finish what they started. And when they do, there will be no escape. The demons are waiting, and they'll come through, bringing hell with them. So be ready? Because the next time, there might not be anyone left to stop them. In transmission.